At 16, Claire still believed that love, even when flawed, did not disappear without warning. She stood just inside the sliding glass doors of the international terminal, her backpack slung over one shoulder, fingers curled nervously around the strap. The airport buzzed with motion, wheels rattling across polished floors, voices echoing through high ceilings, the sharp ding of boarding announcements cutting through the air. To everyone else, it was just another day of departures and arrivals. To Claire, it was supposed to be the beginning of something hopeful. Her aunt had promised this trip would change everything. A fresh start, she'd said, smiling too brightly. Claire wanted to believe her. She always did. "Wait here," her aunt said, setting down a purse and glancing at her phone. "We'll just sort out the tickets. Don't move." Claire nodded quickly, obediently, the way she had learned to be. She sat down on a cold metal chair, her legs swinging slightly, watching families laugh, couples kiss goodbye, children clutch stuffed animals. She imagined herself on the other side of the glass soon, boarding a plane toward a future that didn't feel so heavy. Minutes passed. Then 30. Her aunt didn't return. Claire checked her phone, 1 bar of battery left. She sent a message. "Where are you?" No reply. She told herself not to panic. Adults were busy. Airports were complicated. An hour passed. Her phone died silently in her hand. By the second hour, the terminal had thinned. Some of the lights dimmed. The air conditioning felt colder. Claire's stomach growled painfully, reminding her she hadn't eaten since early morning. She shifted in her seat, pulling her jacket tighter around herself, eyes darting toward the entrance every few seconds. Any moment now, she told herself. But deep down, a terrible understanding began to form, slow, cruel, undeniable. By the third hour, hope had collapsed into something heavier. Something sharp. Claire stood and walked to the bathroom, locking herself into a stall where she finally let the tears fall, silent, embarrassed tears that soaked into her sleeves. She stared at her reflection afterward, eyes red, face pale. She looked younger than 16. Smaller. Easier to forget. When she returned to the chair, it was empty around her. No familiar faces. No footsteps rushing back with apologies. Just strangers passing by without seeing her. They had left. Not lost her. Not delayed. Abandoned her. The realization felt like being pushed underwater. Claire's chest tightened as memories flooded in, every time she'd been told she was too much, too quiet, not worth the trouble. She hugged her knees to her chest, shrinking herself, trying to disappear the way people seemed to want her to. She didn't know what to do. She was a minor. She had no money. No phone. No idea where to go. Asking for help felt terrifying. What if no one believed her? What if they sent her back? Hunger gnawed at her insides. Fear wrapped around her ribs. That was when a shadow fell across the floor in front of her. Claire looked up slowly. A man stood there, older, unshaven, wearing a worn jacket and carrying a battered duffel bag. The kind of man people pretended not to see. The kind people judged without knowing his name. But his eyes were gentle. "You've been sitting here a long time," he said quietly. "Are you okay, kid?" Claire opened her mouth to answer. And for the first time that night, she broke. Claire's lips trembled, but no words came out at first. She hadn't cried in front of strangers in years. Crying invited questions, and questions often led to blame. But the man didn't rush her. He didn't crowd her space or soften his voice in a way that felt fake. He simply waited, hands loose at his sides, as if he had nowhere else he needed to be. I'm fine," she finally whispered, though her voice betrayed her. He studied her for a long moment, the way her knees were pulled to her chest, the empty look in her eyes, the untouched backpack at her feet. "No, you're not," he said gently. "And that's all right." Something in that sentence broke the last fragile wall she had left. Claire swallowed hard and shook her head. "They said they'd come back," she murmured. they didn't. The man exhaled slowly, like someone who had heard this kind of story before. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded napkin, offering it to her. She took it, embarrassed by the tears spilling down her cheeks. "How long have you been alone?" he asked. "Since this morning," she said. "I'm 16. That changed something in his expression, not panic, but focus. "Okay," he said. "Then we do this right." He placed his duffel bag on the ground and gestured to the chair beside her. "Sit here. Don't move." She blinked up at him. "I'm already sitting." He gave a small smile. "Sit here means stay where I can find you." "I'll handle it." "Handle what?" Claire wanted to ask. The airport? Her family? Her life? But his certainty wrapped around her like a blanket. She nodded. The man disappeared into the crowd, moving with a confidence that didn't match his appearance. Claire watched him go, fear creeping back in the moment he vanished. What if he didn't return? What if this was another mistake, another person proving she was invisible? Time crawled. Her stomach ached so badly she felt dizzy. She leaned back against the cold metal chair and stared at the ceiling, tracing the patterns in the tiles to distract herself. Around her, travelers came and went. No one stopped. No one noticed. Except, slowly, things began to change. A security guard walked past twice, glancing at her with curiosity. A woman in a blazer whispered urgently into her phone nearby. An airport employee brought her a small bottle of water without explanation and hurried away. An hour passed. Then 2. Claire's hope wavered. She clenched her fists, heart sinking with each passing minute. Maybe the man had tried and failed. Maybe he had been turned away because of how he looked. For hours after he had first spoken to her, Claire was certain she'd imagined his promise. Then the atmosphere shifted. Voices hushed. Footsteps became purposeful. A ripple of attention moved through the terminal like a sudden wind. Claire lifted her head as a group of men in dark suits approached, flanked by airport officials. At their center walked someone tall and calm, his presence commanding without being loud. He stopped directly in front of her. Claire's heart slammed against her ribs. The man removed his glasses and looked at her carefully, as though committing her face to memory. "Are you Claire?" he asked. Her breath caught. "Yes," she whispered. Behind him, a familiar figure stepped into view. The homeless man. Only now, his jacket was gone. His posture was straight. His eyes held a quiet authority that made Claire's hands shake. He met her gaze and nodded once. "I told you," he said softly. "I'd handle it." For a moment, Claire couldn't move. The words "Are you Claire?" echoed in her mind, colliding with the fear that had lived there for hours. She looked from the tall man in the suit to the familiar face behind him, the man she'd believed was homeless, the man who had given her his seat and vanished with a promise. Nothing made sense. "Yes," she said again, louder this time, though her voice shook. "I'm Claire." The suited man let out a breath that sounded like relief. "Thank goodness." He turned to the people behind him. "This is her." Suddenly, the terminal no longer felt indifferent. Chairs scraped as staff straightened. A security officer gently cleared space around her. Someone placed a soft blanket over her shoulders, and only then did Claire realize how cold she had been. The man stepped closer and crouched so they were eye level. "My name is Henry Walsh," he said. "I'm the chairman of this airline." Claire's eyes widened. The words felt unreal, like something from a movie she wasn't part of. She glanced again at the man standing behind him. Henry followed her gaze and smiled faintly. "You met my brother." "Brother?" The man, his brother, stepped forward. His voice was steady, familiar. "I didn't lie to you, Claire. I just didn't explain." Claire shook her head slowly. "But you said you were." "I said I'd handle it," he replied gently. "And I meant it." He explained quietly, without drama. After losing his wife years earlier, he had walked away from his life of privilege. He wanted to see the world without protection, without influence. He volunteered. He lived simply. Sometimes, people assumed he was homeless. He never corrected them. But I never stopped paying attention, he said. Especially to kids who look like they'd been forgotten. Claire felt tears sting her eyes again, different this time. Warmer. Henry stood. Claire, we've confirmed what happened. The adults who brought you here left the airport hours ago. The words landed heavily, even though she already knew them. Hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Official. I'm sorry, Henry said sincerely. That should never happen to anyone, especially not a minor. They escorted her to a private lounge, away from the noise. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the world softened. Warm light. Plush chairs. Quiet. A tray of food was set in front of her, soup, bread, fruit. Claire hesitated until the brother nodded encouragingly. She ate slowly at first, then faster as her body realized it was safe. No one rushed her. No one demanded explanations. After she finished, Henry sat across from her. Claire, we'd like to help you. But first, we need to understand, who left you here? Her fingers tightened around the cup in her hands. Part of her wanted to protect them, even now. Old habits died hard. But something in the way these men looked at her, like she mattered, gave her courage. She told them everything. When she finished, the room was silent. The brother spoke at last. You were brave today. Claire looked up, startled. No one had ever said that to her before. Outside the lounge, the airport continued its endless movement. Inside, a girl who had been abandoned was finally being seen. And somewhere deep inside Claire, something shifted, quietly, permanently. She no longer felt invisible. Years later, Claire would still remember the sound of that lounge door closing behind her. It was the moment her life split in two, before and after. After that night, nothing was handed to her without effort, but nothing was taken from her again either. Henry Walsh kept his word. He didn't make promises wrapped in drama, he made arrangements wrapped in dignity. Legal guardians were involved. Questions were asked. Consequences followed. The adults who abandoned Claire were quietly investigated, their names recorded in systems that did not forget. Claire was given something she had never truly had before, stability. She finished school with focus sharpened by hunger she would never forget. She learned quickly, not just from books, but from watching how power worked, how kindness could exist without weakness, how silence could be a choice instead of a punishment. Henry mentored her carefully. His brother checked in often, never hovering, always present. They never spoke of revenge. They spoke of becoming. By the time Claire was 28, she had earned her place at every table she sat at. Her name carried weight, not because it had been given to her, but because she had built it herself. On the day she returned to the same airport, she walked through the terminal in a tailored suit, heels clicking confidently against the floor that once felt so cold. This time, she wasn't waiting. Across a long glass table sat her aunt and uncle. They looked older. Smaller. Nervous. They were pitching a logistics company, seeking a partnership that could save them from financial collapse. They hadn't recognized her when she entered the room. Not at first. Then the door opened. Henry Walsh stepped inside. Their faces drained of color. Ms. Claire Thompson, Henry said, gesturing toward her with quiet pride, will be overseeing this proposal. Recognition struck like lightning. Claire met their eyes calmly. There was no anger in her expression. No bitterness. Just clarity. You left me alone at an airport when I was 16, she said evenly. No money. No phone. No food. You assumed I'd figure it out, or that it wasn't your problem. Her aunt opened her mouth, then closed it. Claire slid the folder shut. I did figure it out. The decision was swift. Final. The partnership was denied. Not with insults. Not with raised voices. With professionalism. As security escorted them out, Claire felt no rush of triumph. Just peace. Henry smiled at her. You could have said more. I didn't need to, Claire replied. That was the sweetest revenge of all, not their humiliation, not their regret. But the fact that the girl they abandoned had grown into a woman who never needed them again. Claire walked through the airport afterward, past the chairs, the lights, the endless movement. This time, she didn't feel small. She felt free.